everyone. My name is Carissa Bowen, and I am the Senior Project Manager on the Learning Experience Design team at Digital Promise, and I'm happy to be moderating today's panel discussion, Cultivating Real-World Problem Solvers, Strategies for Learner Engagement. Before we begin, I want to mention that today's webinar will be recorded and shared with attendees and registrants. Please take a moment to look at your Zoom controls at the bottom of your screen. And as attendees, you have the ability to turn on closed captions or live transcripts. So I just want to give another warm welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We'd love to learn who's in the room today. And so if you have a few seconds, please share your name, your location, and what brought you here today. If you're doing this in the chat box, please remember to select to everyone. It might be auto-selected as host and panelist, but if you select to everyone, we'll be able to see all of your responses and we'll be able to see where you're from. Although you will be muted today as attendees during the discussion, we'd love to engage with you in the chat box. We welcome you to share your observations, your questions, or anything else that resonates with you throughout the discussion today. So here are a few prompts that you can answer to or talk with someone else in the chat box about. You can share what you learned. What did today's discussion make you think of? Was there something you found unique or inspiring about any of the stories that you hear today? Or maybe there was something that raised a question for you. You're welcome to pretty much share something that just resonates with you. We'd love to be able to engage with you in the chat box. If you are new to a Digital Promise webinar, here's a little bit of background on what we do. Digital Promise is a global nonprofit organization working to expand opportunities for learners everywhere. We believe that every person can engage in powerful learning experiences that lead to a life of well-being, fulfillment, and economic mobility. So really the common thread throughout all of our programs and projects is a commitment to building a future of learning that is more equitable, innovative, and powerful. So that is a segue into one of our projects called the Ciena Solutions Challenge. And the Ciena Solutions Challenge is a global design challenge that invites middle and high school students and teachers to design solutions to real-world problems and take actionable steps to build a better world around them. Learners, either in traditional school, after-school programs, museums, etc., can design solutions to local sustainable development goals, goal challenges, and submit those projects to have the opportunity to receive funding in the amount of $2,500 USD dollars to scale and sustain their ideas. And so in addition to the awards program, educators are invited to participate in a variety of professional learning experiences and webinars like these. They also have the opportunity to use any of our free resources for students and educators in our resource library. And there are a lot more opportunities to connect with student teams from all over the world. In the last 2 years of the Ciena Solutions Challenge, we have been able to kind of experience student teams tackle a variety of local community issues that are meaningful and passionate to them. So from building a free food finder app to alleviate food insecurity, to spreading awareness of mental health of athletes via a podcast, students created potential solutions by engaging, investigating, and taking action on their challenges and leveraging digital tools and technologies. So this is a really exciting challenge that we are just really thrilled to be able to be running again in the 2023-2024 school year. Today, I'm joined by 3 educators and past awardees of the Ciena Solutions Challenge. You'll hear from these educators and a little bit about their experiences with their students and how they were able to engage their learners in their own meaningful passions and big ideas. So without further ado, I'm going to let today's panelists introduce themselves. So Christy, we'll start with you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I think it's morning in most places. I am not totally sure. My name is Christy Letter, and I teach innovation and design thinking in Colorado at Peak to Peak Charter School. And I taught English for 20 years and then became obsessed with this idea of students and empowering them as change makers. The Ciena Solutions Challenge was really sort of exactly what I wanted to do with students and what I wanted to make. So our project started out as lots of student-led projects and came together under the auspices of an eco-justice fashion show that incorporated all kinds of upcycled, tech-enabled wearables that these students designed that were meant to solve really local problems in our community. And it was amazing and inspirational and like nothing else I'd ever done before as an educator. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Grace? I think you're on mute, Grace.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening. I'm Nabdua Grace Olive Musingo, teaching in Waraga Secondary School in Uganda. And I'm happy to be joining this panel on this big show of Ciena Solutions Challenge. All along, I've been fascinated by sustainable development goals. And indeed, Ciena Solutions Challenge has given me an opportunity to implement activities with my students who are aged between 12 years and 20, and that is the grade level of 7 to K-12. And we are excited to be sharing our story, and we did our work on a project concerning hunger, and this was based on the premise that children in the school were having an issue of hunger and they didn't know how to go about it. So the Ciena Solutions Challenge gave us an opportunity, and I'm happy to share with you how we went along with this challenge. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Grace. And Ed, we'd love to hear from you.
Hello, my name is Edmundo, please call me Ed. I'm from São Paulo, Brazil. And actually, this is the second award that we get from Ciena Solutions Challenge. And the first one, it was called Building a Community for a Learning Community. And this one was the safe zone in what when the students, they came back to classes, they needed a safe place to stay. So we built this project based on the experience that I had in the United States, that some colleges, they have what they call a safe zone. So we try to emulate that. And we started with 3 schools, and now it became an initiative all over the state. So we're spreading around now the ideas of those safe zones. And I'm very happy to be here and very humbled by my colleagues that they have their amazing projects too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for introducing yourself and sharing a little bit more about what your students have been able to tackle in the Ciena Solutions Challenge. And so, like I mentioned previously, the Ciena Solutions Challenge invites educators and students to engage in something we call the challenge-based learning framework, which is really an opportunity, a framework that kind of helps students and teachers to design a solution that, again, addresses the sustainable development goals through this framework. And throughout the challenge, student teams explore a big idea. So they engage with a big idea. They ask thoughtful questions or investigate. They're challenged, and they also act to create a solution. And so if you are kind of beginning in the challenge-based learning framework or in the challenge itself, you're working to help your students become engaged in a social purpose. And that's, you know, a lot of where this big idea kind of conversation comes into play. So you'll likely find yourself, if you are in this phase, in the beginning phases of the challenge, you'll likely find yourself in the engage phase. And during the engage phase, you and your students will be moving from an abstract idea, not super formulated yet, but they might be just kind of bringing up a few different topics or interests or passions. And so from that abstract big idea, it'll lead students into thinking about more of a concrete and actionable challenge using the essential questioning process. So before creating solutions, learners should have a clear social purpose in order to respond effectively to real world challenges. And that's a lot about what we'll be kind of talking about today, and really where these wonderful panelists have a lot of experience in, and they'll be sharing some of their strategies and techniques of how they manage this phase with their students. And so let's get into our conversation. So panelists, I'd love to hear and chat a little bit more about how you all began to engage your students in their social purpose. And so, like I said, you know, a big idea is one that is important on a global scale and that students can work with to gain deep understanding. So I know that each of you, each of your students kind of tackled such really large and exciting ideas. So Grace, you know, your student kind of handled that hidden hunger and did a lot of research around that. Christy, your students kind of tackled a variety of issues around like climate change and sustainability. And Ed, your students tackled, you know, such large issues and relevant issues around quality education. And so I wonder, you know, how you all were able to kind of help your students become engaged with this big idea. So Grace, we'll start with you.
Thank you so much. I would like to say that the minute we had the Ciena, the minute we saw the application about participating in the Ciena Challenge, we were excited because we are going to participate for the second time, and our students who had missed the opportunity earlier were so eager to join the new team. And actually in the C project, we had new members with only 2 who were there last year. So we had to invite them for a meeting. And in that meeting, we had to show them about the application and the issues that they think they can participate in. So we did a lot of discussion on which SDG we could engage in. And after coming to the realization that we needed to get an SDG which was relevant to ourselves at school and the community, we zeroed on SDG 2 about hunger. So in this, we had to do a lot of brainstorming to see how best we could come up with the issues that we could tackle, because we wanted our project to handle real life issues, and the real life issue in the school at that time was hunger, and this hunger was being shown in the kind of, so we had a lot of discussion that was done, and there was a lot of brainstorming in order to come up with the real issue that we wanted to handle. And good enough, the students took lead, and each student was given an opportunity to mention which kind of idea we could discuss. But after all that, that was to give children or the students an opportunity to brainstorm and learn about other things. And in the process, I told them that please go to the internet and research. So they did a lot of research on the internet, and what fascinated them was the issue of school diet, which was relating to food and hunger. And it was interesting that all of them were able to agree that, yes, this is an issue that we could handle. And here, what I did was to help them draw the time we could meet. We had to organize a time schedule outside school when we would meet. And I engaged them in continuous support. They could come and consult. I could help them to refer them to some sites, which we are talking about food, school diets, and all that. So from there, we realized that every student was very active. And that was very interesting to the students. And out of that active participation, we were able to zero onto our big idea.
Wonderful.
Which we later thank. So that is how we went on. And my role was to help them, to support them along the way, so that I direct them to the areas so that we remain in line with the Ciena Solutions standards that were required for the project. And
Wonderful.
that is how I was supportive them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christy?
We use design thinking in my class. And so the really important first step was empathy. So in a way that was very similar to how Grace started, but perhaps a little more all over the place, to be honest, students really began with that same brainstorming, but brainstorming about what problems mattered to them. We had just had a devastating fire in our school district. And some students went even more sort of personal with their empathy and what really mattered to them. We had a student whose design was entirely and ideas for what they wanted to solve based on the degenerative problems that they saw their grandmother having. And another student was very interested in solving problems that had to do with addiction because of things that they had experienced in their own family. So we had to take all of these large ideas that they came up with by starting very local with what they witnessed, the environmental damage that they witnessed, the personal issues that really activated their own empathy. And from there, we had to, of course, weave it together. And the Ciena Solutions Challenge offered us an amazing opportunity to work through that and bring it all together under the auspices of one idea that could unite it. So it was a really exciting process.
Thank you, Ed.
Okay, in the schools I work, we have to use the standardized tests just once a bimester, and the others we can use projects. So my students were almost used to work on projects, but almost always they made projects to have a grade, not to do something like for international award. So when I proposed the ideas, we were during the pandemic, the first one, and they start to share videos with their families. So the families participated. This was the first award. So for the second award, the team was already built because they got excited for the first one. So they started to engage other students too. So it's fun, and we got recognition, this kind of thing. And so we can reinforce protagonists because they also becomes the ones that bring the others to the big idea. Then to engage them, the idea came from them. Because when we start, like Christine did, we start to talk about what were the problems in their communities, and they were saying that since now that they are going back to in-person classes, they almost forgot how to socialize. And so that's why it would be necessary to have a place to socialize that wouldn't be just the court, like the place where they play sports and physical education, or the patio where they eat. Just they needed somewhere else and a place where they can really talk. So that the idea came from them. So the big idea came from them, and I just make the direction. So I wanted to enforce their protagonism.
Wonderful. It's so interesting to hear how different just motivation, different things that kind of motivate students to want to participate or want to kind of think about something that is a lot larger than them, and then, and you know, their kind of inner kind of world of what they're kind of going through on the day to day. So that's amazing. I'm sure that it took some time to get down to, you know, kind of the integral details of what students wanted to become more invested in or wanted to learn a little bit more about, and kind of maybe took time to narrow down in a sole idea. Christy, you started talking about that a little bit, how, you know, kind of was all over the place, and, you know, needed to find an opportunity to just kind of narrow down some kind of concrete ideas. So I'd love if you could start, you know, kind of talking a little bit about your students and the connection that they made to, you know, that their big idea. But what did you notice when your students kind of were gravitating to this topic or a big idea? What did you notice about your students in this kind of phase?
It was a really interesting process because, you know, and I'm going to admit with this type of learning as a teacher, when I first hear their million ideas that are very much theirs and in their own worlds, I'm like, these are amazing, but also I don't know if we can bring them together. But then in the process of doing that, in the process of them realizing how much their ideas overlap and how much they care, it was unlike any other teaching experience, because it wasn't an abstraction. It wasn't something that, you know, was knowledge away from them. It was hands-on. And as they realized, oh, wait, we're going to teach each other and teach our community and actually change something, the level of energy, and I would even say electricity, that it brought to the experience was a whole new level as far as watching students truly engage. And that really helped us in our process when they realized how much they could work together and help each other, and help their communities. That was an energy unlike any other in my long teaching experience.
Thank you. Ed or Grace?
Let me start. One thing that I noticed is that real world problems or real world solutions, they start locally. Like not all, I have to tell them sometimes, I have to be realistic, and not all of us are Greta. You know, like we can't just go around in a boat and try to solve everything. So we have to try to think locally, and then the solution spreads around there. And the other thing that I got that is that when we were brainstorming the big idea, one of the students, he said, "Oh, the problem with in my community is that there is a lot of pollution in the river. So people that throw trash there should be punished." And I said, well, but I have to talk to him and say, well, but what don't you think that before people pollute the river, they should know what are the consequences of that? So sometimes we also we have to educate them how to educate, like, and how have to realize that education is the key to many of the problems. They have to solve them, to tell them that that's the starting point of many things.
Awesome, thank you. It looks like Grace knocked off for a second, but she should be joining us again pretty soon. So yeah, you all talked a little bit. I'm just curious to know, you know, how were the feelings of your students during this time? Because Christy, you talked a little bit, I think both of you kind of touched on the idea that this is not a typical sort of style of teaching for sort of this traditional sense of learning or teaching where, you know, typically teachers are at the head of the classroom, kind of directing students. But in this case, you know, the agency and the thought process is kind of put on students. So I don't know if you all want to respond to that, maybe of how your students might have felt during this time.
It was very interesting, and I love the way you said that it turns it around. I think one of the most exciting things just that I saw is that the students took, when they learned something and came up with an idea, they loved teaching each other and teaching me about their idea. It really did flip so many, I would say, traditional paradigms with what they were doing. And it was pretty darn empowering, to use that word, to watch that process take place.
Grace, did you want to respond to what you noticed about your students once they gravitated to a big idea? What was something, you know, sort of that you noticed about your students or about the process?
Yes, sorry, my phone, the network had gone off. I would like to say that it was exciting for my students to participate in the Ciena Challenge. One, they were able to do a lot of research. They were able to do a lot of reading. And in the process of doing a lot of research and reading, they were able to gain a lot of knowledge that they were excited about, which they did not even know about. So to me, I saw them very active, very encouraged and motivated, and even they came up with many more ideas. So they started saying, what about this? We have started on this project. What about this one? So it seemed as if it was so exciting for them. And in the process, we were able to do a lot of engagement. They were very active. They were able to do a lot of investigation. Even they went ahead to ask friends from other schools what their school diets were like, what kind of food they were eating. And you know, in a school setting, children are always excited about food. So there was a lot of excitement to research on this topic. And it kept them learning, and they were able to discover a lot of knowledge about the issues of hunger in the world, countries which are most affected, the kind of foods eaten by different countries and different schools and people. So to me, it was a lot of learning, deep learning that the students were engaged in. And that is very satisfying, that through this learning, they were able to get information about other topics and relate information from one subject to another. And to me, that was exciting. And they also discovered that knowledge is not from only one subject, but they can learn from a variety of sources, and those variety of sources integrate and reinforce knowledge from one idea to another. So it was an exciting topic, and this helped us to keep learning in the process of getting to know what the real issue was, until they came up with diet, school diet, and how to improve it.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I think that there's a lot to be said about when students can actually take ownership of something, and it sounds like, you know, they need to be, you know, obviously invested in it. They need to sort of see themselves in it. I heard you talk a little bit about that, Christy. You know, the real world problem, they have to start locally, like Ed had mentioned. And so I think you all kind of touched on a lot of what I would imagine that educators that are joined here today and pretty much everywhere would like to see more students become or see themselves in issues that can be translated back to their learning curriculum, so they can kind of make those connections like Grace was just mentioning. So thank you for those responses. So like I mentioned, you know, before, helping students resonate with a local issue while trying not to develop a solution right away, I'm sure it can be sort of challenging, but we'd love to learn a little bit more about what your students, what their process sort of looked like in developing that essential question. So once they kind of got to that concrete idea, what was their process in this essential question? So Ed, we'd love to start with you in learning about your students' process.
Yeah, well, as I said before, we're talking about the problems, the social problems that they have, the socializing problems that they have, also social at schools, and then we're talking about bullying, and it's been an issue for decades, and I don't think we're gonna solve that, but you can prevent bullying. So the question was, how can students be engaged through youth protagonists using safe zones to prevent bullying? I talked to them, like, we as teachers, we have some theories about bullying, and some of them are just like, they say that teachers should interfere with bullying. I don't know if it's that. I'm not here to opinate on that. But then I asked them what would be the solution, and then we got to the youth protagonists, that they should find places like they can talk to themselves and know each other. So we got engaged, like, not only prevent bullying but also empathy, because if they have empathy and they know their colleagues, it's a way to prevent bullying. And usually bullying happens a lot because of the differences. It's like, so it's not a Freudian approach, but it's what is strange to you, so that's why you were afraid of it, or you bully somebody. Is shows something. The bullying shows more of the bully than the person who is bullied. So we thought about that. They talked about that, and then that's how we got to this question, and then we got the proposal of the solution of the safe zone, to the place where they can be.
Amazing. Christy or Grace?
Our process of, sort of making the big question, it involved a lot of communication between students, and also really engaging the sustainable development goals. To have those conversations and that empathy that Ed was just talking about, but looking at it then, right? They started so local, so in their own hearts and their own backyards, but then they had to see, okay, what does this connect? And they started to see the connections between all their different problems they wanted to solve, and even between sustainable development goals themselves. Like, oh wait, economic concerns are connected to climate change by who's disproportionately affected, and responsible consumption is definitely related to climate change. And then through really looking at those sustainable development goals, it helped sort of frame the larger questions that we could work on together.
Thank you. Grace, did you want to respond to this question?
Yes, please. The process we took in developing our ancestral question came as a result of the students reading and doing a lot of research and seeing the interconnectedness of information. So since they were researching on hunger and food especially, that's how they were able to come up with the hidden hunger. Actually, this topic of hidden hunger was discovered in their process of researching on the internet. And it is from there that they realized that in their own school, they could be suffering from hidden hunger because the diet was not as good as they had read about. So it is from there that they now realize that, we realize that at school we have a challenge. And the challenge is that we are not having all the nutrients in the food that we are eating. And it is from there they also started sympathizing that the school cannot be able to buy all the things that they need. And that's when they realized that they could be of use. They could make a difference. And that's how they started developing. How can they be responsible for their own better diet in the school? And that's how the issue of the ancestral question came. How can we improve our school diet? How can we prevent hidden hunger among students? So it was as a result of reading a lot and seeing the interconnection between the knowledge that they had discovered. And that's when they realized that SDGs can be a real real solution to the issues that affect them. So it is from that we took the question of how to end hidden hunger in the school. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. It's so interesting to see all of those different connections, and just hearing from you all, I'm sure that, there was a lot of excitement and sort of like a lot of aha moments, like, wow, I can't believe like students are really kind of taking it to this level of questioning and inquiry and things like that. So we know that each of you sort of are in different grade levels and different subject areas. and trying to apply the challenge with your learners can, be difficult on the onset. So I'd love to kind of hear from you all about any roadblocks or challenges that you all found. I see Christy nodding her head because there's probably lots to say around this, but any roadblocks or challenges that you all found when engaging or attempting to engage your students in a localized issue or a social purpose. So Grace, we'll start with you. What challenges or roadblocks did you find kind of in this phase?
Thank you so much. One of the challenges that we faced was on the agreement on which issue to handle, because they read, they researched and realized that there were many challenges, there were many issues. So we had to take a lot of time in deciding which one to work on. And in that way, we are not able to work as fast as possible because it was going forward and backwards. Every time we are moving forward and backward. But that was good enough because it gave the opportunity to the learners to learn a lot of things and to see the interconnection between one issue and another. Then one of the roadblocks was time. Since it was a school time program, we were in session. The earlier challenge we participated in the previous year, it was because of COVID and we were in lockdown. So we had all the time. But now this one, we were at school and we had to do all the schoolwork at the same time we had to participate. And yet, in our team, there were students from different classes. So when you come to the timetable, there are students who are engaged in different lessons. So putting them together was a bit challenging, but nonetheless, we had to commit night times during preps to make sure that we come up with this. And also what we also discovered is that there were some times when the students were not able to meet because some of them would be at home, because our school is a boarding school. So at times when the students have not yet paid all the fees, we could send some of them home. So some would be at home. When they would come back, they would find when their friends have already advanced to another level, and then they would come and ask questions and pulling them a little bit behind. But nonetheless, it was quite good, and they loved the experience of also knowing that when you are doing a project, there are also challenges, there are also issues that you need to deal with. So it was a learning experience for the children to discover that, yes,
Wonderful.
in the implementation, there's a challenge.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Christy?
I would say that for me, I really related, Ed, when you talked about, boy, during the pandemic, it's almost like students forgot how to socialize or communicate. And I think that I made some assumptions like, oh, collaboration, that will just happen naturally and seamlessly. And that's not the case with ninth graders. And it's definitely not the case with ninth graders who just went through what they just went through. And I would say that needed a lot more explicit instruction and troubleshooting than I anticipated. To really talk about what is collaboration, how do we listen to each other, and how do we consider ideas even when we're going to be selecting one. And the students had to work together in groups and then figure out how to communicate. Our entire project was really communicating with our whole community. So that was quite a journey, and it took some definite stumbles before we worked it out, but I think those are pretty valuable life skills that I saw them developing and improving at over the course of the project.
I was listening to Grace and I say, okay, Grace, we didn't talk before about that, but it's exactly the same answer. Like the time was essential, and it was also it was online. So the first project that we were not, I was not with them, so sometimes it was complicated about that. and I'm not at the school nowadays, and so they're still going on online with them. So we have a group text, and you can imagine how it is. Like I'd say, hello, people, you gotta focus because they are. Imagine the students are like in a chat, and they start talking about something else, and then I look like, oh, there are 70 messages in the group. So okay, they come up with an amazing idea, and they're talking about I don't know, a singer or something else, and it's very difficult to focus sometimes because it's not it's something that if my groups are also like races that they are from 6th grade to 3rd year of high school, so they are not very different ages. So sometimes it should be difficult for them to connect, but it's not. I think the other problem, the main roadblock that I had sometimes is to find partners. Sometimes the teachers, usually in Brazil, we have the teachers separated by areas. Like English, my case, I'm an English teacher. I have to work with Portuguese teacher and physical education teacher. Go figure why. Anyway, but and sometimes I want to work with teachers like math teachers. That my friend Jonas who's there, and we work with science and other areas. Sometimes the people who has the same affinity with you. And but it wasn't even the main roadblock. The main drop for me was the administrators, because sometimes they don't understand your project, and then they say, but I don't see this. I don't see why you need to do this. And they don't have time to listen to you to show, okay, let me show you how this is important, but I can't now. And I'm not encouraging anybody to be unsubordinate, but for subordinated, but you go there and do it, and then they say, okay, look, I won a prize, an international award. Will you help me now? That's it. So I think was the main roadblock and how to jump it.
That is a very good point, and one that I think we should, even dissect even more, maybe in another conversation. But there's a lot of just sort of investment that needs to be made, not just from students, but even from just the larger sort of holistic view of the school community around other educators sort of finding themselves in this sort of, or seeing themselves kind of being able to facilitate something like this, and even kind of going even broader to administrators and kind of showing them sort of the value and the impact of this style of learning, which is pretty awesome that you all were able to kind of overcome those different roadblocks, especially around COVID and the pandemic. I mean, it just kind of rattled a lot of ways that students learn, and we can see the impacts of that today. So yeah, that's such good points. So, today, like I mentioned before, we know that students are presented with assignments that are sort of content centric, and at times they sort of lack a little bit of that real world context and opportunities for them to connect with issues happening outside of the classroom, causing them to be potentially uninspired or disengaged with the content. And so I'm curious to know from you all, what would you say are the keys to learner engagement? If you had maybe one or two keys, what would those be? And if there are any helpful techniques that you want to throw in there, feel free to share. So Christy, I'll start with you. Do you have any keys to learner engagement?
I just think letting the students drive and letting them realize that they are truly setting the agenda. I think that that's new for them. And they're like, wait, is there, something written out where we're just going to take a test on a static body of information coming up? And it's no, this is going where you're deciding, you're making the map. You are the cartographers of what we're doing. And that seems really key, and letting them reach out to community as well. Even when, I hear you about the administrators, but when students had questions, can we do this? My secret weapon was have the students, both for their engagement and to get administrators to say yes, have the students go in and ask. And they were like, wait, what? You want me to talk to the administrators? You want me to talk to the community members, talk to the experts? And yes, absolutely. You ask the question, you find the information. And in that process, they really did sort of sit up straighter, and they got more yeses, I think, than I would have, because, you know, they were the ones who were doing it. And that process just made them take so much more ownership for what they were doing. And they were subsequently just so much more engaged. I think that that's the, you know, the challenge-based learning part of the Ciena Solutions Challenge is so key to that process.
Thank you. Ed, do you have any keys to learner engagement or any techniques that you find useful?
I agree totally with Christy. Like they have to take the wheel and say and do it. And another thing is don't underestimate them. Sometimes say, okay, one of my students, like she's brilliant. Her name is Evelyn. She was in 6th grade in the first challenge, and now she's running a project by herself. She started together about animal testing. She presented the youth festival, and I had nothing to do with it. Like they made the research. I say, well, like, did you do this? And the presentations, like their PowerPoints are way better than mine. I was like, so don't underestimate them, because when they want to do it, they have a lot of drive, so they can do it.
Grace?
Thank you so much. The keys to learner engagement in my case was the issue of technology. My students were able to engage. You know, it is of recent that our school has been connected to internet. So that has been a game changer in the school. So the students are eager, and therefore they were eager to learn more and more. And that ICT helped them to learn so many things, and they were able to share their stories. Each one would tell the friend, I've read this from the internet. I've read this from the internet. So there was a lot of teamwork. There was a lot of collaboration, and all this helped to deepen their learning and to make the project a success. So I would like to say that the key changer was the ICT technology. Then there was the collaboration that took place amongst them. This one keeps them active, and the sharing of their success stories was very good, because after every stage, they would go and inform their friends of whatever they have done. And as we speak now, we are remaining with going to the radio station to make a presentation. So they are looking forward to that. And I know after that, they will be able to share their stories about it. So that helped them to remain engaged. And also during the process, we would give them warm-up exercises where they were tired. We go into singing a little bit to make the project interesting, so that they don't feel that it is only this and this. So it was a way of relaxation also. So that one kept moving and helped them to be fully engaged. Thank you.
That's awesome. There's so many. I think that the audience today could probably just name off all of the different keys that you all mentioned and be able to walk away with those. I think there's a lot to be said about the style of teaching that you all took and what you kind of deem as helpful or useful. So thank you for sharing those. So before we sort of go on to the question and answer portion of our conversation today, I'd love if you all, as sort of the experts or have the experience in this style of teaching and being able to integrate the challenge in your subject areas in the way that you have been, and you know you've all been pretty successful in facilitating this type of challenge with your students. You know, what advice would you give to educators as they plan to engage their learners in a meaningful localized issue? So Ed, I'll start with you.
I think the first one is to be realistic. We start small, and then we grow. Sorry. So we have to be realistic, like do what the best we can do by the time given, because sometimes we want to do something, but we don't have time to do that. And the students also, they also have the other activities. So what can we do in that short period of time? And then when you have more time to develop, because the project we started 2 years ago still goes on. So that's we have to think about sustainability too. Like it's not something that we're going to do now for this award and then it will be over. No, the project must go on, otherwise it loses their senses, or lose the objective. So I have to think about that. To be realistic, is start something and then we grow a lot. And find, as I said before, find your partners, find your supporters. Sometimes you don't have administrator like a place you work. Like what happened to me, my administrator didn't help me, so I reached out for a friend of mine, and he's also a principal in another school. Say, okay, my school is not interested in doing that. Is your school interested in that? Say, yes, it is. Okay, let's do it in your school then. So my name regretted after. So that's and he's there, Jonas. Thank you. He's there. And find partners. For example, I have my friend Ivanetti. He's from Nova Campina, São Paulo too, and he was awardee last year. And say, okay, let's apply. I say, no, I'm thinking about giving up. Don't give up. So we have like a positive peer pressure, because like we can do it. So you do it, I'll do it. I'm sending, how is it going? And you won't keep telling the other, okay, how is it going? So you kind of have to do it because your friend is doing too. And sometimes you find a partner, like my friend Safitri, she's from Indonesia. And we were able, in another kind of award, we were able to make 2 international events in Indonesia. And I went to Indonesia to present it there. So and it was so it's something that we never thought it would be possible. Now we're trying to bring her to Brazil. So I never thought it would be possible, but we did. So now we're trying the other one. So
That's
maybe
amazing.
the next Ciena Solutions challenge can help us. So that's something like we start small, but we can get bigger. But you have to must have your partners, otherwise alone we can't do it.
That's amazing. Christy, do you have any advice?
I just loved what you said about finding your supporters, Ed. I think that's my number one piece of advice to educators is you don't have to be the expert on everything, because the students are coming up with things that, I mean, I had no idea on, I was not an expert on, and reaching out to community and reaching out to others, I was constantly surprised, especially when the students reached out, how many people were willing to help us, to come into the classroom, mentor, and to really give us freely their time and their knowledge on subjects where, you know, we were just starting out. And that resource, that community, those supporters, as Ed put it, that was so essential to everything.
Wonderful. Grace, do you have any advice that you would give to educators?
Yes, I would like to say that educators need to give the learners the opportunity to take lead on the issues that they need to discuss or the projects to work on. Once the learners take the interest, they will be able to be motivated to continue working on the project. You don't have to force them. But if you dictate ideas on them, at times they may be resentful, because I know the students would want to own the products. They would want to own the process. They would say, yes, we did it. Yes, we did it. So I would advise that learners be given the chance to do the things that they think that they can do within their means. Also, I would like also to say that you start small. You start with whatever. You don't need to be knowledgeable in all these things, but whichever little idea that you have, help the children to start. I've listened to my friend who has said that maybe at times the administrators are not willing to cooperate. So in such a situation, you just start. And in the process, they will come along with you. When they see the final product, they will be inspired to join you. And then also to keep sharing the information and the successes that you have achieved. let the students be proud, let the teacher be proud of it and keep sharing. And in that way, it will give motivation for more and more learners to participate.
That is
And then also, thank you.
Sorry, Grace, did you have one more piece of advice?
Yeah, I was saying that we need to get these projects that help us to integrate the classroom activities so that the students are able to relate what they learn in class with the community projects that they are participating in. Let the learning be real, authentic, and relevant. And in that way, it will give meaning to whatever they are doing. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all for those keys and those pieces of advice. I think that educators or folks in the audience will be able to keep those in mind with being realistic, keeping it small, and finding your partners. I think that's such a undervalued or under kind of used resource that you probably have someone to bump shoulders with that can like partner with you on this. And definitely, I love the concept of like making sure to celebrate your students. That's kind of what keeps them motivated. It keeps them engaged because as we all know that roadblock challenges, they're gonna happen. It's almost part of the process, and that's what helps them sort of course correct. So thank you all so much for sharing all of your experience and your stories with the audience today. We have one question in the chat box so far for the team or for the panelists. So from Mohan, one question that he asked was, what was the strategy to set the time limits for your project? So one of you can answer, or two of you in the time that we have, but we'd love to be able to hear from you. Did you have a strategy around the time limits for your project? So whoever wants to take it.
Mine was what is not so nice, but sometimes you have to lie about the deadline to students. Say, okay, we have to do it for I need to send it for next week, and then otherwise if you don't have just set the deadlines, especially in Brazil. We have a kind of a culture to let everything for the last minute, and we cannot let that culture influence in the challenge. So we have to make small deadlines. So for this week I need this, for next week I did another, not the whole thing in 1 month. Like take the steps and set the time for the steps. I think that was how it worked for me.
Wonderful. That's a really good piece of advice. Ivanette asked, so I don't know if Christy or Grace had any other responses, but there's another question in the chat box from Ivanette. She asked about, are there any different strategies or approaches to working with students with special needs? This is a great question. Does anyone have experiences around that?
I found that in my integrated classrooms, again, I teach 9th grade, and it's every 9th grade student worked on this project that we were doing. And so there were definitely students with special needs working in groups with other students. And it kind of goes along with my answer to the time question, breaking things down into smaller chunks, really discrete time, sort of limited tasks. But then that allowed me, for students who needed the prompt for the day in another language, who needed extra help with certain how they would show me what they were thinking, it allowed, by breaking those steps down into smaller, more discrete steps, it definitely helped with making sure that I could meet everybody's needs and that collaboration would be successful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Christy. If there aren't any other questions, I just want to again thank you all so much, for panelists, for sharing your experiences, and attendees for joining today. Before you leave today's session, we would love to know how we can improve upon our webinars. We're always looking for feedback and suggestions. And so, feel free to share your responses in the survey that I just sent to the chat box. You can also use the QR code if you have your cell phone near you, and you can scan the QR code on this slide. So that is pretty much wraps up our conversation. Please join us at our next educator panel discussion on Wednesday, October 11th, where we'll be talking about supporting students with inquiry-based learning. If you have any questions about the Ciena Challenge, or if you even want to share any questions to our panelists, we'll be sure to share them with them. Please email us at cienachallenge@digitalpromise.org. If you know someone that would like to register for the challenge, you can also register on this site. I'm going to add both of these links to the chat box for your access, so you can register for the next webinar, and you can register for the challenge if you haven't already. Thank you, Christy, Ed, and Grace, so much for your participation. We really appreciate your time and your effort and your stories, and we hope to hear some more wonderful stories from you and your student teams this coming year. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.